So, this is something that you will hear it again and again. And you have to, and it is a necessity to hear it again and again. And that is to make a path, a spiritual path, any spiritual path actually, especially the path of the Buddha. If you like, rule, one very important, indispensable rule is what we call in Tibetan, Tapshe Yamadalwa, that there should never be a separation between method and wisdom. Method and wisdom should never be separated. This is the rule, if you like, the fundamental rule. This is spoken in the Theravada. This is very much emphasized in the Mahayana. Also in the Tantrayana, for instance, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava, he said, your view has to be as vast and infinite as sky, and your action has to be as subtle and as subtle as flower. There's so many of these kind of expressions. For instance, you will also find pith instructions coming from our gurus. When it comes to the view, you have to be brave. When it comes to the action, you have to be cowardly. Even a small insect, you should be so careful not to step on it. You should be so fussy, cowardly, panicky. You should be so, careful when it comes to the action. But when it comes to the view, you have to be really broad-minded and open-minded and go out of the zone. And art of knowing how to do that really will tell you what kind of practitioner or a spiritual person you are. A measure, how the way we measure whether you are a good spiritual, whether you are a genuine spiritual practitioner or not, really depends so much on how you balance these two. It's difficult, this one. Because many times when it comes to the view or the wisdom, they are kind of similar here, then it can, sometimes students get hijacked, not just students, just generally, methods can hijack the view. Vice versa, sometimes the view or the wisdom hijacks the method. For instance, when you feel like doing what you want to do, then you bring, everything is emptiness. Do whatever we want, since nothing exists anyway, right? So you become kind of you bring that intellectual understanding of emptiness to justify your action. Then at times, when it is related to a certain value that you have, such as if you are a vegan, or if you are a whatever, if you have a certain hang-up, certain values that you really cherish, then you can really go fussy about this and you can really get so stuck with it. And you impose that upon others and make your life miserable and others' life miserable also. This is all the sign of not being able to balance the wisdom and the method, view and the action. It's always, this is a trick that is going to be difficult to sort of handle for some time. But this is also your challenge and, I don't know, homework. If I labeled it like that. And this is not a simple. This has permeated to many different way of thinking also. Even, for instance, like many times you will meet these people who love to do, so-called people who love to do meditation. Because they like to sit and probably they like the meditation bit. So they tend to overlook all the hearing and contemplation. I mean, there's even, schools like that. There are schools like that. I would, if I categorize, this is a big generalization, of course. I would say that Tibetan Buddhism today probably is being, certain part of Tibetan aspect of Tibetan Buddhism, especially the younger generation, they're becoming very attracted to the pursuit of the wisdom, intellectually, of course. So you see lots of monks, geshes, khenpos, all they do is study. And they're so good at it. Study, argue, commentaries, reread the commentaries, analyze. And they're around 50. Still analyze, read, study, translate, footnotes. Then they're 60. Still do that. Geshes. I'm being, actually, geshes, when the title geshe, the general expectation of the Tibetan people is someone who's learned. See, someone who's learned. And that's respected, that's cherished, that's the trend. Most of these geshes, khenpos, monks, hardly they sit and meditate. And in fact, they kind of develop this attitude that they even say things like, without the meditation, without the hearing and analytical and critical studies, what is, meditation is pointless. It's like without the hand and feet trying to climb a mountain. That's what they always say. So there's that kind of people. Then you can go to places like Bhutan or some parts of India, especially the rural places like Bhutan, like East Bhutan. You see lots of yogis. And they are always doing retreat, meditation after meditation, so many. But many of them, they don't have a good understanding of the basic Buddha Dharma. They have been saved by great master. Well, if they encounter a great master, if they have a one-pointed devotion, and if they don't have much of a distraction, why not? They're in a good hand, so it's through their merit. They're doing okay, so they're in good hand. But the danger is when you don't have that base foundation of hearing and contemplation, which Maitreya emphasized so much, when you immediately jump into so-called practice and meditation, because when you jump into that, you jump with aspiration, inspiration, devotion, adoration to a being. Okay, beautiful, very good. But you know, many times adoration, devotion, aspiration, inspiration, all this also has its, within this package, there's also human emotion involved. You know, you are inspired by somebody because that person has to have, that person happened to wear patchouli aftershave or something like that. You understand? There's some, small things like that. Or maybe that person happened to have a nice, shiny, long hair. Or it doesn't matter where he walked, where he smiled. All these are good. All this can be a stepping stone, an attraction to a teacher because of his or her physical appearance, because of his or her eloquence, because of his or her manner, grace. All that can be a stepping stone. But we have to know that this also involves emotion. The emotions are, as I've been talking past few days, is deeply rooted to a mistaken idea, right? So it's very, so then what happens is so you don't have a good hearing and contemplation. You got sort of pushed by your devotion and inspiration, that pang of inspiration, and then you go to the mountain, 10 years, 20 years, suddenly, I don't know, a pimple on your bottom, which irritates you, which makes you lose your sleep. I'm serious. You don't even need a big obstacle. All you need is a pimple, which irritates you. You lose sleep. When you lose sleep for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, by around the 5th night, you insomniac, you think all sorts of things, you get depressed, then you get sort of sad, you pray, all of this, that doesn't really work. Then you begin to lose that inspiration, devotion. You even begin to have a wrong view. When that happens, a bit of a hearing, bit of a contemplation is always an insurance. So, this marriage between wisdom and method is utmost important. In fact, when I say marriage between wisdom and method, I'm only saying this for the sake of communication. They are actually one. At the same time, they are different. Like a water and the moisture of water. They are kind of like a rays and the sun. Rays of the sun. They are kind of separate, they are kind of one. But for ignorant beings like us, only way to actualize that, actualize the oneness of the wisdom and method, is by first trying to unite them, because we have already sort of divorced them. So this happens a lot. I wanted to tell you this morning because this is kind of important. Because here, this wisdom and method, this union of the wisdom and method is so important. On the beginning of the 9th chapter, Śāntideva said, "Yana dida thamchini tupe sharap tundusung." All these rituals, all these paramitas, all this discipline, they are taught by the Buddha for the sake of the wisdom. This sums up everything, all the Mahayana path. Okay, now I will give you some sort of more logic why it should be like that. It's like this. darkness, the shade and light. Shade and light are kind of one, kind of separate. So this is what's called jidamni yerme, the ground. Yeah, okay. Yeah, shade and light are separate, yes, in a way, but without the light there is no shade also. One example. The truth, something called truth, the real, the truth, and the non-truth are also in union. I don't know whether you understand this, but these two are not a separate entity. They are kind of one. They're one. Like the dark and the shade and the light. So, it's like the rainbow, the beautiful appearance of the light, the rainbow, and its empty nature, its non-existent. So its existence and its non-existence is simultaneous. It's one. It's not a separate thing. Like a dream. As you dream, the non-existence of that dream and the story of the dream is simultaneous. The dream, the fakeness of the illusory aspect of the dream didn't materialize once you realize it was a dream. Even as you dream, it never existed. Otherwise, how couldn't you dream an elephant inside your room, for instance? It won't even fit in your door. As it appears, it does not exist. That's how things are. Everything, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, everything. All these things, it's illusory, is simultaneous. Simultaneous is even not the right word, actually. Because simultaneous indicates there's two entities. It's just one. Like the scarecrow, like all the optical illusion, like the echo. There is a sound, there is a voice talking back when you hear an echo. But there is nobody talking back, and that is one. This is the complicated part, okay? I mean, to that, On the other, not complicated. You just have to get used to this logic. So, relative truth and ultimate truth is one, or it's simultaneous. Okay? So this is why, because this is the fact, that's why the path has to be also wisdom and method in union. Because of this. Otherwise, path is faulty. There's a fault. The path is not safe. So this is why I was saying yesterday, remember? Especially in the Mahayana, like a renunciation. When you are trying to renounce the worldly pleasure, yes, we begin with thinking that those are temptation, those are not good, those will lure me, those will, make me, really suffer, those are really, all of that. You can begin thinking like that. But the real reason why we should really renounce is they are illusion. There is no point of getting obsessed with these, because they actually do not even exist. That is the best renunciation. So, Aryadeva, Nagarjuna's disciple, Aryadeva, amazing master. Actually, I've always wanted to know, SP, can you, while listening, Google where Aryadeva come from and when he was born? I keep on forgetting. It's a little bit mystical, the Aryadeva. It's a little bit mystical. Yeah? Oh, yeah. Do you want to also check that? Whether he would vote for Modi or whether he would vote for someone. What's his name? Kejriwal or something like that, yeah. So, what did he say? Aryadeva said, Gangla tongba ni rungma, dela tamje rungwa yin. For someone who can accept shunyata, the wisdom, for this person, everything is acceptable as a path. So for this reason, Mahayana has the confidence to pick up a tissue, a napkin paper, and think, this is 100,000 flowers, 100,000 incense, 100,000 prostration, and then throw it. Because the reason is, this ultimately is not also a flower. It is imputed by human beings. Who proved that? All the billions of goats. They would just eat it as a food. They don't think this is a lotus or lily, whatever. See, I don't even know, is this a lotus or lily? What is the difference? See? Distinctions, imputed phenomena. It's all mind-made. This is a napkin paper. Oh, should not offer this, Buddha, how can we offer a napkin paper? Lotus. Because, the Indians, they love lotus for whatever reason. The lotus is such a big deal. It has now become a political symbol also. And, even supposedly, even this, right? Supposedly it's a lotus bud, all that. And that is now being bought by Tibetan And of course, it's now being bought by the Goan hippies, which then gets exported to California, Cape Town, Byron Bay, Woodstock, all of that. This is the reason. Okay, so if you think like, oh, lotus is the proper offering substance, not a napkin, what's happening? You are divorcing wisdom and method. Your path is becoming narrow. On the day when you arrive on a lotus-less land, and on the day when you walk, when you are stuck in a napkin factory for months, you will have nothing to do. You will be so stuck. You will not know how to practice because you don't have the key to combine. You don't know the union of, wisdom and method. Okay?
Śāntideva was a disciple of Nagarjuna and author of several important Mahayana Madhyamika texts. He is also known as Śāntideva, the 15th patriarch in the Zen tradition.
He's what? He's known as what?
Śāntideva,
Karnadeva. Yes.
15th patriarch in the Zen tradition, and Bodhisattva Deva in Sri Lanka. Aryadeva was born as the son of a king in Sri Lanka.
Uh-oh.
Now here's the good news. Some Chinese sources, however, suggest that he was born in southern India in a Brahminical family. According to Geshe Nawang Dakpa of Serajay Monastery, he was an Ayurvedic medicine doctor monk,
Yes.
just like Ashwagosha and Nagarjuna.
Yes.
He was a student of Nagarjuna, all the same thing again. According to Drikung Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, Garchen Rinpoche is the current incarnation of Aryadeva.
What?
According to the Drikung Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, Garchen Rinpoche is the current incarnation of Aryaveda.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. He is supposed to have only one eye, right? Yes. That they didn't say? Okay. What? Oh, yeah? Oh, Anadeva. Okay, one eye. Yeah, he is supposed to have... Yeah, he was the one who defeated Ashwagosha. Ashwagosha was one of the great, we call him, nowadays we use the word, what? Hindu, but I guess you can't really say Hindu. But anyway, yeah, he was a great Hindu scholar, Ashwagosha. And you know the story, right? Like Ashwagosha was a great poet and a great scholar. He defeated lots of Buddhists. And I guess during those days, the winner, whoever wins the debate, the loser have to follow. Loser and their everything, everybody, gangs, the disciples, everybody joins the winner. So it's believed that Ashwagosha actually made a lot of Buddhists into his follower. And finally, the news arrived. 2 days, what is it? Where His Holiness just recently, Locho, you know, the Nagarjuna, Nagpur, yes, from Nalanda, because finally Ashwagosha came to the great University of Buddhism, Nalanda, and everybody was scared. Okay, he's going to win the debate. So Nalanda scholars sent this bird messenger, I think pigeon, yeah, and to invite Nagarjuna, but Nagarjuna thought Arya, he doesn't have to go there to defeat Ashwagosha, so Aryadeva went. Aryadeva was sent, and Aryadeva went to Nalanda, had a long debate. Aryadeva won thoroughly, but Ashwagosha was beginning to break the rules, because instead of joining the winner's school, he wanted to jump into the Ganges and kill himself. So Manalanda monks all grabbed him and locked him up in the Nalanda University's library for 7 days and nights. And there he has nothing to do except reading the books. So as he read the books, he was reading the sutras, and there he found Buddha actually predicted him in one of the sutras that in the future there will be a guy called Ashwagosha who will come and write my story. And that moved him so much, and it's believed that he cried and cried and cried for many, 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 many days. And then he wrote the most beautiful book called Bodhicharyavatara, which is the life of the Buddha. And I recommend you to read this. It's one of the most beautiful Indian poetry at its best, I would say. It's just so beautiful. And now my historical knowledge, thanks to you guys, remember the tradition, not too much historical study emphasize. My historical studies, I don't have a good memory, but I think Ashwagosha also wrote Malam Dunjupa, the 70 verses aspiration. And I think, you should research this furthermore, I think he wrote it with his blood, because later he became a renouncant and hermit, and on the way back from the begging arm, he saw this hungry leopard and leopard family, and he had so much compassion. He poked his own body and let the animals lick the blood. And then he went back to his hermitage, and by then he was losing lots of blood, and he had to rest a lot on the way. And using the blood, he wrote on where he stopped for a rest, he wrote verses in praise to the Buddha and his deeds. And I think on the 70th verses, all the blood, exhausted, and he died. Very, very, very. Anyway, that's Aryadeva's disciple. Okay, so I wanted to tell you this because some of you may think, all this, bath, incense, flower, rituals, all this kind of, and also the coming, confession, rejoice, asking the Buddhas to turn the wheel of the Dharma, asking them to live long, all this sounds very religious and very theistic. Yes, but if you join them, if you unite with the wisdom, then it becomes a perfect path. And it becomes the bodhisattva yana path. Okay. So then, now, today, a little bit more. Actually, I think we could finish, hopefully, the 4th chapter this time also. So now, this precious bodhicitta, the vehicle of the wisdom and the method, now in order to upkeep, maintain, nurture, stabilize, we need to apply bhagya. Bhagya is carefulness. We have to be cautious. Okay, here we are beginning to talk about mindfulness now. Mindfulness in its most extensive way. So first, Śāntideva is saying that even if you break the vow, let's say if you have promised to give a hungry person some food, and if you don't keep that promise, it is said that this person is considered stingy and eventually get rebirth in the hungry ghost realm. Now, the follower of the bodhisattva yana path, having taken this pledge to liberate all sentient beings, if we don't keep that promise, if we can't maintain that pledge, then one is deceiving all these sentient beings. So, forget liberation. Even a higher birth is impossible. There is a part of the stanza that sort of indicates that it is a really grave, hideous thing for a bodhisattva to do, to break this kind of pledge. This in itself has some point that I should tell you. Like in the Śarvakayana, like let's say Theravadan monk, that there are 4 grave, hideous things they can do, which if they do, then they break the vow. They disrobe. Killing a human being, sexual misconduct, stealing. Now, I will not go through all the details, because that if you talk about details, each and every one of them has so much criteria. And then what we call michulamijun. It's a lie, but it's a very big lie, like claiming you are a incarnate, you are a God, you are a savior, basically deceiving lots and lots of people. So these 4 are like the most hideous thing that a monk can commit, and no more monk. Okay? Then For the ordinary people, in the Buddhist precept, the worst is killing. The worst. Killing. So when we talk about code of conduct, there's always the worst thing that you can do. Okay? For the ordinary people, the lay people, the killing. For the monks, the four, vows that I just mentioned. Now, for the bodhisattva, someone who has taken the bodhisattva path, for them, even more hideous than killing and lying and deceiving and all that is actually giving up the bodhicitta. It's considered really, really, really grievous thing to do. Okay, Śāntideva is beginning to just say how we have to be cautious now that we have taken the bodhisattva yana as the path. Just to give you the context, this was taught in Nalanda University, remember? So anyway, Śāntideva, in the part of the stanza, he's saying that such kind of being who has given up bodhicitta, they have so much unfavorable consequences that in fact path of the liberation is almost impossible, but there are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who can liberate them, and that kind of power of the deed, only the Buddha knows and Buddha is able, not by ordinary beings. Even if we harm one single sentient being, that could create so many pain and suffering and throw us in continuous rebirth in the samsara and destroy ourselves. Now, if we give up the bodhicitta, basically you are giving up the wish to benefit all sentient beings. So, what is necessary to say how grave this mistake is? If we keep on breaking this kind of pledge, and then if we keep on taking the bodhicitta vow again and again, this will linger your path, and it will take long time to actually achieve bodhisattva attainment, such as the first bhumi. For this reason, as we pledge to the bodhisattva path, we should try to follow its discipline step by step. And we should do it right from today, this moment. If we don't do it, we will only degenerate ourselves lower and lower. Even though the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas come and gone, if I don't make myself available and receptive, and open, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas cannot nurture and ripen us. And if we keep on doing that, again and again, we will be thrown into the dungeon of the samsara, and there we will be bound, cut into pieces, and tormented by disease, etc. To encounter the time and environment where the Tathagatas have walked, and to have devotion to Tathagatas and their teachings, and to obtain a precious human body, to get accustomed or to have appetite for virtuous thoughts and deeds are very, very rare. Judging from present moment's way of thinking and action, there is not so much cause for us to even obtain a precious human body in our next life. Judging from this, today's thoughts and action, more likely we will be accustomed to non-virtuous thoughts and actions. And this will only give birth to more and more suffering, and we will become helpless. If we keep on accumulating more and more non-virtuous actions and less virtuous actions, for eons after eons, we will not even hear the sound of bliss. For this reason, Tathagata also gave this example of a turtle, blind turtle. There's a, you can read this in the commentary, blind turtle and the yoke. Maybe I should give you some time to ask questions.
Rinpoche, you were talking about the method and the view. And there is a very classical question in many spiritual traditions. So I'm asking, as a practice of, used as a practice of contemplation, the question is, who am I? And when I hear you, as you bring the teaching, it seems there is a constant denial of the self in the Buddhist teaching. So I wish to know what Mahayana has to say about it as a practice of contemplation, and what is your experience about it?
It's a bit like this. Yes, the constant denial of existence of the self, but also it should be accompanied with a mind training to work with a self-cherishing. So when I say the second part kind of indicates there is a self, you understand? Because we are working with the self-cherishing. Okay, lower down the greed, lower down the self-cherishing, others are more important, others are equally important, you are the servant to others, all of this. So those two need to be combined. Because, as I said earlier, shade and the light comes together. During the path, the self is simultaneously, simultaneous is not the right word, but the nature of the self, the nature itself, nature of the self is non-existent. But I'm talking about the nature, the manifestation, the habit. Hypothetically, you can say it exists. I'm here, you are there. I'm hungry. I want to eat something. I want to get this. I want to avoid this. All that habitual pattern exists relatively. Combining these two is difficult, but it's very much doable. So if you keep okay, practically speaking, this is what we do. Okay, Mahayana. Samjhan thamji devatan devi jutan tambar chuchi. All sentient beings wishes to be happy, just as how I wish to be happy. May all sentient beings be happy and have the cause of happiness. Immeasurable, part 1. Part 2, nobody wishes to suffer, just as how I don't want to suffer. May all beings be free from suffering and the cause of the suffering. Part 2. Part 3, may all sentient beings never lose the joy of the absence of the suffering, which is like really working with the envy and the jealousy, okay? So that's the part 3. Now, those 3 are more like a relative practice, relative bodhicitta. Then comes the last one. The last one is really big. The first step of the last one now. There's many steps. The last immeasurable thought. The first step, again, may all beings, including myself, may all beings be free from distinctions of me, others, self, others, good, bad, friends, enemies. That much ambition, smaller. And then the last immeasurable thought then gets expanded. Then all the vipassana. And then little by little, there is no, earlier we say, may all sentient beings be happy, just as I wish to be happy. So kind of indicating there is a self and all these sentient beings. Towards the more matured stage of the vipassana, you don't think those things. Every time there is a distraction, you just watch that. And by the way, probably this morning or maybe this afternoon, as requested by some of the people, I will lead shamatha. That might also help a little bit. So basically, then you get used to the technique of doing nothing, thinking nothing, not fixating, no fixation. You really get used to no fixation, especially no fixation towards the self. When there is no more fixation towards the self, there is no self. Okay? Now that is through the practice. But before that, what we are doing now is hearing and contemplation. To back up that practice, so to speak. And the way we do is through analysis. Where is the self? Your form is not, your feeling is not that way. Okay?
Puja, you mentioned that the self is an aggregate of various causes and conditions, and at some point in time it was mistakenly identified as the self. So is Buddha nature separate from the self? Or is that, you said it already existed, so is that permanent?
It is separate from self. And what was the second question?
So you said it already existed. So
yeah.
does that mean is it permanent?
I can only say it that way. I don't have the skill like the Buddha. When he was asked the same question, he kept quiet for a long time. And then, because of that gesture, so many attained enlightenment. I just can't help but talk. And I'm sure if I keep silent, you won't be satisfied too. Even keeping silent is a gesture, actually. So we have to somehow use the words like it exists, is there, out of the lack of choice of words we are using. Did I hear you said, is it permanent?
Yes. Yes.
No, because it's not a thing. You can call it whatever you like, actually. Tathagata Garbha is the Buddhist favorite name. You can call it whatever you like. It's not a permanent creator. And I'm telling you this because there's a danger that you may think that, that's the Ishwar. That is the Almighty Creator. No. Even though, I have to say, when I read the stories of Vishnu, metaphor is very, very, very close, very close. Anyone could read it and think that, it's the same thing. But I think there is a difference. Very subtle ones. The biggest, probably one of the biggest difference is Mahayana Buddhist deconstruction of everything. Systematic deconstruction of everything. I was told that in the later part, Shankaracharya kind of did the same thing, and some Buddhists, a little bit, like that Shankaracharya got it from the Buddhist, and he sort of stole some ideas, but who knows. Jain, on the other hand, is very unique. I don't know so much, but the little I know, it's really, really close. But some of the action of the Jain, the Mahayana Buddhists may not agree with, like practice of basically starvation until you end. The Mahayana people will think there is a lack of uniting the wisdom and method. Remember the famous act of ending the penance by the Buddha after 6 years? He thought, this is extreme. This is not going to go anywhere. This is just too narrow. So he decided to eat yogurt, whatever. Okay. Next one, yeah?
Rinpoche, as regards to notion of self, this might be a little too intellectual, but yesterday you explained the Buddhist...
What is self in Japanese?
Jiga.
Jiga.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Ownness, myself.
Wholeness?
No, ownness, like...
Ownness. Okay. Anyway,
Yes.
continue your question.
You explained that the Buddhists only found the self as some components, the 5 aggregates or the skandha. Can you please explain in terms of 3 vehicles how the Theravada and Mahayana and Vajrayana, the intensity or the characteristic, how it transforms in terms of 5 skandhas?
Yeah. Not so big difference. The only thing is in the Mahayana, Vajrayana, we don't need to involve this here. I mean, Vajrayana's way of thinking, well, okay, the Vajrayana, well, one big thing about Vajrayana is the 5 skandhas, the 5 Buddha family. Whatever that means. So let's just get rid of that for now. But for Mahayana, they don't only settle down with deconstruction of the 5 aggregates. They deconstruct all phenomena, which the Charvakayana people think not necessary. And in a way, why it is not necessary? Because the Charvakayana's aim is to be enlightened. Right? That's their aim. And to get enlightenment, you don't need to understand more than the selflessness. And they are right. But for the Bodhisattva Yana people, their aim is not to be enlightened. Shepe sila minejing, nyingji shila minetang. This is what Maitreya said. With your wisdom, you don't dwell in the samsara. With your compassion, you don't dwell in the nirvana. Bodhisattva's aim is of course not to stay in the samsara, but also not to dwell in the nirvana. So it's a much grander view. So for that reason, deconstruction of everything, there's a standard format of expression. We always say this. From the form to the enlightenment, all things do not exist. For the newcomers, it's a bit confusing what it means. But, when we study the notion of all phenomena, we have a categorization. And then the first category of phenomena is form, feeling, consciousness, so on and so forth. And then ayatanas, dhatus, all that. And then the last is the enlightenment. For the Mahayana, even the enlightenment does not exist. I mean, even the enlightenment, I should not say that, even the enlightenment is deconstructed. Okay? So, Mahayana will not just be satisfied by knowing 5 aggregates are emptiness. So if you read Heart Sutra, you will know that. First few lines are all about form, and then Gashime is Gashisebe, no death. All that. All the 12 interdependent co-origination they deal with. And then it even talks about no enlightenment. Isn't it in the Japanese Heart Sutra? Does it mention about the non-existence of the... Yeah, okay. That's it? Okay, continue please. Yeah.
This is requesting more deconstruction from a Mahayana's view, I guess. When I dream of an elephant, I wake up and no elephant is in my room. But if I get hit by a taxi, I wake up in the hospital. So you said both are the same, and my request is for you to give a little explanation of how
it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult. Imagine this. You are dreaming now with an elephant, okay? And I'm in your dream. And you are asking me, how can this elephant does not exist? I will not be able to convince you it is a dream. In the dream. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. It's difficult. Because I don't have that shoes. And I don't know whether you are prepared also. Very difficult, because it's so real. So real. Yes, you are right. You are in the hospital. You have witnessed. There's a doctor, there's a nurse. How can I do not exist? But so is in the dream. You have so many witnesses. Once in a blue moon, when you fall from a cliff in the dream, suddenly you realize, oh, this may be a dream, right? Does it happen to you? That, by the way, is a very good example for the yogis. We call it experiential perception. For the yogis, after they practice a lot, let's say you are a CEO of Deutsche Bank, but you practice and practice. After a few years, it could hit you. In the middle of a big conference with other CEO, you think, oh, is this real? Yes. Around that time, you are poking a hole in your samsaric net. And then, just to continue, because it may be useful for you, then initially, people will think you are strange. But if you keep on being courageous, and keep on practicing, what will then happen is you will be matured. More and more you realize that this is all complete joke. But you will then learn how to play the game for the sake of others. And you will be the best CEO of they will think that you are the most ambitious, most on time, most pain in the neck boss. You are so good at what you are doing. But one day somebody come to you and say, hey, for the benefit of about 200 people somewhere in Istanbul, you have to quit this job. You won't even blink. Because for you, it means nothing. If there's some other benefit happening more than CEO job, you just drop it. Then you have become quite okay. You are free. Very free. Anytime you'll drop anything. So, around that time, you will, if it is for the benefit of sentient beings, you will never know how to say no. Even it means becoming a big mafia boss or something. You will gladly take it. You will have no principles. Your only one principle is to benefit sentient beings. And you may have been, for 40 years you have been a vegan. But if it is benefiting sentient beings, you may have a campaign pro-McDonald's campaign. You may lead that campaign. Because all this means nothing. It's all a child's game. Okay, we should take a break.